Interest rates and measures of return. Part 6. Gross, net, and leveraged returns. Welcome back. Last time we covered HPR, EAR, APR, and compounding. Now picture a real estate investor in Dallas who puts $40,000 of her own money down and borrows $60,000 to buy a $100,000 rental property. The property appreciates 8% and she collects rent. Her lender charges 5% interest. She thinks she made 8%, but her actual return on equity is 12.5%. How does putting up less of her own money amplify her return? Let's break it down. So what is gross return? It's your investment performance before subtracting any investor-specific costs like management fees or commissions. The gross HPR formula: ending price minus beginning price plus cash flow divided by beginning price. A stock bought at 100, sold at 108, with a $2 dividend. That gives us a gross HPR of 10%. Now, net return subtracts specified costs. If a 1% management fee applies, net return drops from 10 to 9%. That 1 percentage point is the price of professional management. But costs aren't the only deduction. After-tax nominal return applies tax rates to the correct components, and real return strips out inflation. A bond bought at 1,000, sold at 1,030 with a $40 coupon. Capital gains taxed at 20% leaves $24. The coupon taxed at 30% leaves $28. Adding those up and dividing by 1,000 gives 5.2%. With 2% inflation, the exact real return is about 3.14%. So the return keeps getting smaller at each layer: gross, net, after tax, and finally, real. Each step peels away another cost. Now for the big idea. What is leveraged return on equity? When you borrow to invest, return on equity equals asset gain minus interest divided by the equity you put in. Here's our leveraged return formula. The property gained 8%, so that's $8,000. Interest on the $60,000 loan at 5% is $3,000. Subtract the interest and she keeps $5,000. Divide by her $40,000 in equity, and there it is, 12.5%. When the asset return exceeds borrowing cost, leverage amplifies your return above the unleveraged 8%. But what happens when the spread turns negative? If the property only gains 3%, that's $3,000. Subtract the same $3,000 in interest, and she's left with 0. 0% return on equity, even though the asset itself went up. The rule is simple. If asset return exceeds borrowing cost, leverage helps. If it doesn't, leverage hurts. The spread is everything. Now let's apply what we've learned about leveraged returns to a CFA-style exam question. An investor purchases $50,000 of an index fund using $20,000 of her own capital and $30,000 borrowed at 4%. The fund returns 10%. Her leveraged return on equity is closest to option A, 10%, option B, 19%, option C, 25%. Let's think through it. Asset gain is 50,000 times 10%, which is 5,000. Interest is 30,000 times 4%, 1,200. Equity gain is 3,800. Divided by 20,000 in equity, that's 19%. The answer is B. Gross return is before costs. Net return is after. After-tax returns apply tax rates to the correct components. Real returns strip inflation. Leverage magnifies gains when asset return exceeds borrowing cost and magnifies losses when it doesn't. And with that, we've completed our 6-part series on interest rates and measures of return. From required rate of return and risk premia through weighted averages, time-weighted returns, compounding conventions, and now the full spectrum of return definitions. You now have every tool CFA Level I expects for measuring and interpreting investment returns. That wraps the series. Keep practicing, and good luck